Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Yes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Public hearing on a conditional use permit application for a drive-in business at 2211 Badger Drive, Hudson Chicken LLC. Public hearing, is there anybody here that would like to comment on this? Wrong crowd? Anybody, would anyone like to make a comment? Anyone like to make a comment? Anyone like to make a comment?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Oh.
Oh,
Is it locally owned? Will it be locally owned?
Makes no difference.
Don't know the answer.
Yeah.
No other comments?
motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Got a motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Discussion of possible action on a conditional use permit application for a drive-in business at 2211 Badger Drive, Hudson Chicken LLC.
Thank you. All drive-in businesses in the B2 zoning district are required to obtain a CUP to conduct a drive-through operation. This is no different. It's been reviewed by our engineer. Staff recommends approval.
So moved.
And I'll second with any conditions that Mike has.
Okay, got a motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on final development plans for Popeye's Restaurant at 2211 Badger Drive, Hudson Chicken LLC.
Approximately 2,400 square foot restaurant, fast food restaurant facility located immediately adjacent to the Five Guys and Panera Bread facility. Concept development plans were approved last month. Since that time, the applicant has made all required changes as suggested by staff and by our consulting engineer. Staff recommends approval with conditions.
I will so move with the conditions.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on recommendation to council regarding temporary zoning for those lands included in the Cami Holdings LLC Atwood Revocable Trust petition for direct annexation by unanimous approval, parcels 020-1085-30-0000 and 020-1085-20-000.
A couple things as we consider, and I think this is probably both of these, if not one of these or both, are why we have a large audience tonight. When an owner or someone petitions for annexation, before the common council can act on said petition, and when something's not within our extraterritorial zoning district, we need to recommend a temporary zoning classification. It's important to note that this temporary designation does a couple of things. A, it does not either approve or disapprove of any proposed annexation. That decision will be considered at the June 18th Common Council meeting. What it does is we have, you choose the closest, or it's the nearest zoning designation as what it currently is. Currently, this is in the town of Hudson. It's a residence zone for the town of Hudson. It would come in as agricultural residential in the city of Hudson. That basically is our largest lot subdivision for single family, the closest to. The property would continue to remain to be used as agricultural until such time development plans were reviewed and approved as provided for, if and when the property were to annex. So what this does is it basically says, okay, if this property comes in, the Plan Commission is recommending that it comes in as agricultural residential. And then later on, if the property annexes, obviously both of these next two items, they are development plans, concept plans. They would have to apply for whether, they're planning, planned residential development, whatever it is that they are desirous of doing. And at that point in time, you know, the city would consider those applications. But right now, it's coming in as ag residential, if that's what the Plan Commission is desirous of doing. Are there questions?
Page 3, you have an incomplete review of the annexation. Does that affect what we do tonight?
No, they just have to do a separate ALTA for that other parcel where the house is currently at.
Okay.
None of this is contingent on the sale of the property or anything like that. I mean, what we do here,
No.
or,
I'll move we recommend to council the temporary zoning.
and I will second.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion?
Well, this has been looked at by the city as part of our overall planning as coming into the city forever, as far as I can remember. That really no surprise that it was, the boys had promised their mom that they wouldn't develop it or sell it until after she passed, and that has occurred. But we've always considered it as coming into the city when looking at it in terms of capacity for the waste treatment plant and everything else for it. I mean, it's consistent, I think, with, as far as I know, that we've looked at that property as in our long-range planning.
I concur with everything you said. All the years I've sat on this, it was not official, but known that this was at some point going to come into the city. It's been put in our master plan. It's been incorporated, noting that it would change. I mean, just everything about it is a natural progression here, so I don't think there's any surprise at all.
Okay. Looks like we have some people that would like to comment. If you would come forward. Please.
Go to the
come
podium,
forward.
please.
State your name and your address, please.
I'm Tom Nielsen. My question on this one is, if it's just a preliminary acceptance, if you will, at a time when it would be talked about construction, building approvals, is that when Carmichael and Vine would be looked at as how do we control the traffic on Carmichael and Vine?
Sure, that's a good question. So,
It's the worst intersection in Hudson right now. So, I mean, does it require a roundabout? Does it recover what? But that would all be looked at that time before there would be approvals made?
yep, it's actually being looked at right now too. So as per when we consider annexation requests, not germane to the conversation tonight on the temporary zoning piece, we have to do what's called a capital cost study and then a budget study. So the capital cost study, what that does is it looks at all of the infrastructure, including streets, sewer, water, storm, and we know that if something comes in, it has a burden or an impact on our existing infrastructure, right? So we basically, or what we do is we assign a cost to that, which the developer pays for, or they pays for their share. Now, if we have to do something that's larger, that benefits a larger area. So a good example of that is wastewater. What we have to do is they know what they need to serve their site with a pipe. Say it's an 8-inch sanitary sewer line. If they wanted to, but we know at some point our city will grow. It has grown. It's grown ever since I grew up here. And we make them put in what they need to do, and then the city would pay for the upsizing of that line. So with that, our traffic engineer is looking at all the impacts on the roadway, including that intersection.
Well, and I agree with Fred. Those of us that have lived here a long time, and it's been discussed for years, at one point in time, it was going to be a school, or tried to be a school.
Yep.
But it is such a traffic issue up there, but as you're saying, that'll be addressed at the time.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
That's been ongoing for some time, the traffic, and we've known it, and it's been all upon the redoing of that Carmichael corridor, which there has to be a trigger for that, and this might be the trigger, so.
Well, and I had discussion with some other realtors today, and one of the things that they said was, well, Carmichael will have to become a 4-lane. Well, I think we all know Carmichael's never going to become a 4-lane. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I won't. No, I won't, sorry.
I wouldn't mind seeing it either, but it'll be a long time coming.
I've seen plans of 4-lane already.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments? Again, give your name and address, please.
Mary Martin, I'm a longtime resident of Hudson, Wisconsin, and I live up in Mayor Road area. I just wanted to say that also I've always heard good things and that it was going to be used for the city at some point. And my other question was the one that Tom just asked, and you gave a good answer. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think for everybody too, another good thing to point out with Carmichael is that we could turn the faucet on, so to speak, and create a four-lane road right now, but we're always going to have that choke point at the bridge, which we don't have control over, the interchange of exit 2. So we're working currently with DOT to try to figure out through the Carmichael Road corridor study and then understanding that we have development pressure, how do we sequence those expansions and events in a way that makes sense. So I just add that too.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion of possible action on recommendation to council regarding temporary zoning for those lands included in the Land Devco of Hudson LLC / Lee petition for direct annexation by unanimous approval, parcel 040-1025-70-000 and 040-1026-30-000.
Same type of, or same actual thing that we're looking at here. The only thing different is that the town of Troy actually has an agricultural reserve zoning district, which is what the property is currently zoned. So we have the same. We would recommend that now the standards are slightly different. We would recommend the same. Also, the back half of that property, the western half of that property is within the riverway. So that would be the other thing, is to consummate that, so that's also noted when the council would make a consideration and determination on that annexation request, on this request.
Well, there was a proposal to develop this parcel a few years ago, and all of those issues came up. It didn't go ahead or proceed due to whatever reason beyond our control, but I recall that, especially along the river. So.
You know, and talking, going back to that budget study, which again isn't germane to the temporary zoning component.
Right.
You know, there's deferred assessments, there's, large improvements that would have to be made to Mayor Road, which would be a developer expense. That's for the most part a rural cross-section that's in pretty rough shape currently.
Mike, not only Mayor Road, but River Ridge Road can't handle an entrance on that end. It's not a certified legal street up there, I believe. Is that correct? Did you look into that?
River Ridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, it's right of way, it's just not up to a standard that we would.
I have grave concerns about an entrance down there, and I've heard from residents as well over there, as their representative, that they have concerns. And my other question, not to interrupt your beginning, but has it been settled with the Riverway, with the cluster housing down there on the riverside?
That has to be looked at via a conditional use permit in the rural residential classification, which that property remains, just because, as was discussed last meeting, that property, if the city were to annex it, it doesn't come into our river town classification like the rest. It does not.
Does not.
It does not. It has to remain as the boundaries were in 2004, I believe, when the Scenic Riverway ordinance went into effect. So it stays in the rural resident, or the small town, or the river town, or the small town NR 118 district. One of those, so if somebody wanted today to say in the town of Troy, and again, this is something that the town would have to weigh in on, somebody could come in and propose a cluster subdivision through the conditional use permit process. unless the town had a more restrictive criteria, whether they limited it to 35%, 50%, or, you know, whatever it may be. But yes, it is understood that an applicant could, a developer at some time could apply for a conditional use permit, which would need to be considered by whatever body would be responsible for reviewing and approving that, and making a determination on that at that time with reasonable and measurable conditions.
But at this point, the west end of that property development needs to flush out the scenic riverway regulations.
It would require, yes, it would require conditional use permit
Okay.
approval.
So
If
is
they
that
wanted to
germane
do-
to this conversation tonight?
I think it's germane in that it's the scenic riverway, and that's, you know, we're basically saying, or what we are saying is that a temporary zoning, if it comes in as the same in the riverway.
With the
So,
same
Yeah.
bundle of restrictions.
And we don't control that, you know, that's state statute.
That's already on the land.
Yes.
But
Yep.
we do control the CPU that would be,
We do control the
requested.
CUP, yep. And you can place conditions, if this were to annex, at that time, that are reasonable and measurable. That's the criteria that new legislation has created when cities review conditional use permits. You know, there's language in state NR 118 that talks about preserving views, things like that. The idea of cluster is to effectively move density in one area to preserve open space in another, right? To limit the negative impacts or the visual impacts of, you know, traditional
yeah.
R1 zoning.
I have one question, and just because there's a couple of big chunks of land coming for annexation. Sewer plant, I mean, with the dog track going now, really the last big parcels that are in the city appear to be going. These are pretty good chunks. Is there adequate capacity to handle all of this, and/or what is that status?
Yep, so right about the time that I came on board, a little over a year ago, the utilities commissioned a study with our engineering firm SEH, actually the Minneapolis office or St. Paul office, to look at just that, the capacity, not only the capacity of our plant, but also of our collection system or the pipes. So what we've determined preliminarily is that we're in a better space than we thought we were. We aren't complete with that study yet, but based on our comp plan and understanding that we have growth areas identified, we can handle all of those out to 2040 with some not as significant improvements. We're not talking about building a whole new wastewater treatment plant. We aren't talking about massive interceptor lines. We're talking, you know,
What type of capacity increase are you talking about then? Out of curiosity, 10, 20%, 30%? I mean, I'm curious. You said it, so now what is it?
as a percentage.
Well, yeah, I mean,
You know,
if we're at
so I think I defer to Kip, but I would say that with some improvements to our existing plant and at least one lift station, you're looking at being able to handle, I think it's an extra, I don't want to be wrong, I don't want to be, you
Well,
know,
no, I'm
I know,
I'm
you know what I
not trying to
mean?
put you on the spot.
I know you're not. It's just we've gotten to a point where we're comfortable knowing that as long as we don't get a large wet manufacturer, which we haven't, or, you know, a bunch of those types of things, we're comfortable, at the very least, taking what's identified as growth areas in our comprehensive
Then
plan.
one more question to follow up on that. When does the city then say, okay, we are approaching capacity, and we have to start charge for adding capacity in whatever form it takes to be able to do that?
That is,
I mean, that's just natural to
Yep.
what.
Yep, and some of that's identified in the budget study when we look at doing these annexations, so.
If I may interject on that, if you're okay with that, Pat.
Yeah, go ahead.
The city has future planned and reserved monies aside.
That's what I was going to say, the same
Yeah,
thing.
we are prepared to do what we have to do, up to and including building a new wastewater treatment plant. So there are
Know
funds.
that.
Yeah, the city's been doing that for some time.
Okay, thank you.
But we're confident, assuming the trends continue, that we're good until 2040.
In
Yeah.
keeping with the current
Comp
10
plan.
comp plan that we have.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And, and assuming that we don't, if we're talking about expansions of the business park, which we are, we're going to have to make sure that when we do attract business and industry to this community, that, we're very cognizant of, if it's a cheese factory, having just come from Greene County, I know that those use a load of water, a ton. We can't handle that. We know that. But our business park didn't develop that way. It's more trucking. It's more, it's not a high demand user. So,
Well, I just want to make sure those thoughts are in this process.
yep. And what we're working towards is effectively a map with rings on it that shows, okay, we can, with it, once you get this far, that we have to do this, or this far.
Yep,
This one's a little different in that none of it is force main, or it's all gravity. So all of like Red Cedar Canyon, Heritage Greens, Stone Pine, Carmichael Ridge, Atwoods, up by middle school, that all goes to effectively one lift station that we know we have to improve, which is included in our capital cost study on that annexation. So this one's a little bit different in that it doesn't require it.
thank you, thank you. I will move to approve.
I'll second.
A motion and second to approve. Got comment from the audience? Name and address, please.
My name is Jürgen Weidling, and I live in Hudson. I live in the Villas of River Ridge. And before that, I lived in Troy Township. So I've been in this immediate area for 50 years. So I'm somewhat familiar with what's going on. The question I have, it relates the traffic that may come up after your elaborate study is complete on River Road. That's my backyard, and it's currently used for walking, and I can be more pushing baby cars, riding bicycles. How far do you want me to go? So that's what's currently used for. The second question relates to that development where there are 25 houses scheduled. If the scenic river ordinance will not grant that waiver, will there still be 25 houses, or will there be less? And the reason I'm asking it, I have built a house years ago in a scenic river, and I remember the battle you have to go through. My lips are still dry from adding certain zoning people. So it's a lengthy process. But will there still be 25? Or if the scenic puts the brakes on, will there be less? Or are you going to build two-story houses or allow that? Perhaps you haven't given the thought yet, but let me plant the seed. Maybe you want to look at that. And the other thing is, as long as you're talking about the sewage treatment plant, years ago, I spent 5 years, we studied the St. Croix River and how clean it is, and I was one of the members. It's not just treating it, does it still comply with the DNR discharge from the sewage treatment plant, that it's clean? And what happens if we have more influence? There are nursing homes. I'm not eligible yet for it, at least I hope not, but typically in residential nursing homes, there's a little bit more flushing going on. Then, you got to maintain your sense of humor. We're not, this is not the end of the world, but that's the reality on it. So, I remember years ago we've talked about running a line out on 94 and building evaporation ponds back there because St. Croix River may not be able to use a plant as a collection, but then pump it up on the corridor 94 and put some evaporation ponds out, and they're nice. I mean, they're typically very compatible. So the only thing I'm asking, I have nothing to complain about, just planting some seeds that I hope you'll consider when you get to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Tom Nielsen. I'm the president of the Villas at River Ridge Homeowners Association. And Patty Nault is sitting here. She's the president of the Tallgrass Association, Homeowners Association. And we do, based on the concept drawing that is in the plan, the biggest concern we have is egress. That Aspen Drive is just a short 2-block road, and that's one of the egresses. River Ridge Road isn't an improved road, and that's an egress. O'Keefe Road is the only road you might say that's somewhat improved, and Industrial Road is full of apartments and Fleet Farm and every other thing. So the egress from 430 homes, as I count the residents, that's a big deal, and none of it shows as emitting out onto Carmichael Road, and I suppose it's because of the activity on Carmichael. But my other concern was wastewater, because between these two developments, not including the dog track that's going on, we're looking at 700 residents proposed here. That's a lot of flushing, as he just said. But I think that's definitely something that, especially the egress on the Lee property, they've been trying to do this for 100 years, but the egress well, Mayor Road isn't an improved road. So I mean, if you look right from the get-go, it's going to become a real access issue or egress issue. So that's just our feeling, is that, and especially the River Ridge Road thing, as he said, there's more people that walk on River Ridge Road than drive, and it's because Anderson Park is down at the end of it, and there's a lot of apartments and such down off of Mayor Road, and that's those people's playground, and they walk by continually. So it's just something that really it's stuck in our craw already, and especially when we saw the plan that shows 438 residents, as far as I counted on that project. That's a lot of residents. So, my thought.
Thank you. Step forward.
Hi guys, my name is Amy Rastetter. I live at 1408 Wheatgrass Street. So I'm right on Mayor Road, so this development is going in right across the street basically from me. I guess my question is why maybe there hasn't been any thought given to access from Carmichael Road, knowing all the work that has to be done, and knowing obviously the situation with River Ridge, with Mayor, and with all these other roads, as the other two gentlemen brought up. So that's my question.
We have a traffic study. We require them to do a traffic study as part of what they'll be requesting to do, which will have to be tweaked as we work through whatever it is from concept towards final, if we get
They're
to
going to
that
have
point.
to jump through all the hoops.
Yep,
Still,
so we
this
need-
is just
Yep.
saying we can.
Yep, and, we have, it is being looked at, the extent of that will really, like I said, be further developed as we understand exactly what the density is in apartments or the duplexes or 3 units, and then, the 25 single family is probably the easiest one you can get in terms of that, probably not changing too much from a traffic study perspective, but they have an engineer doing it, which is the data there is being verified by our engineer, and there's back and forth, and there's dialogue happening right now with that, so.
Good evening. My name is Michael Stone. I live at 1428 Wheatgrass. Lived there about 10 years. And I guess I'd just like to address, I don't know all these rules and stuff you guys are talking about, studies and all this. I just love the Tallgrass community. I like everybody in there. And I guess I'm here, rather than talking about rules and what you're going to do, about our feelings. And I really like where I live. I like what I see out my back door. And I'd like you to take that into consideration when developing, or to the untrained eye, this looks like Hudson taking a bite out of another town to make money. That's just what it looks like to me. I don't know, it's probably something different, but on the face, to an untrained person, that's what it looks like. And just, I don't think that's Hudson's mission. It's, there is no better town in America. I just love the place. And think about us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mary Martin, like I said, I'm a homeowner. I've lived here all my life. I own property in the industrial park, and I've been a owner of Viking properties. So I really do appreciate the city and all the work that all of you do. But I couldn't help but notice in the paperwork that we got a copy of through Patty, that however the petitioner's proposed medium and high-density developments are not consistent with the city's current master plan. And they are really heavy, but they're talking about putting in our section back there. And I hope that's relooked at. The other thing, you said there would need to be major improvements on Mayor Road, which I agree. And some improvements, and they're in this particular paper, it says some improvements are required. So that's a real heavy difference. But I would like you to consider those things too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Rob Howard. I'm here representing as a volunteer at Camp St. Croix. We would be the immediate neighbor to the south of this development, right off of Riverview Drive. And my concern is just as this goes, I'm not anti-development. I'm really kind of appreciate development when it's done right. And I just want to be sure that as planning commission members and the mayor and city staff, and one of the things that we are, what's vital to our mission is the protection of the youth that we serve on camp. And that north property is where our day camp facility is. So we have upwards of 400 or so kids a day coming to that camp, 25,000 a year overall in the facility. So it's very important to us to maintain a buffer. As you look at the plan, as the plan is brought to your attention, we just want to be sure that the buffer along that road is maintained visually, and that we can maintain our security for the kids at our camp. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Has to be, they're out of the city. Cool, but that's it.
Maybe that becomes a requirement for the development that it's sized in. Sorry, ma'am.
I'm right here.
No, you got the floor.
Yep.
Okay. I'm Patty Nault. I live at 1412 Wheatgrass. My whole residence faces the south, and I look at that beautiful field, and, that's one of the reasons that I bought the property that I did, because it's as close to nature as I could get, and I'm a city kid from Milwaukee. But we look at the people that use that road. They're dog walkers, there's runners, there's bikers. On Saturday, you'll see 200 cyclists, bicyclists go through there. And the traffic that cuts through off of Carmichael uses Mayor Road to go around down River Road and come out towards the post office there. And they use it as a getaway to cut through so they don't have to use all the traffic on the main thoroughfares. And I just think about the building that's going to go on there and what's going to be out my window. Dirt, dust, noise for God only knows how long. It won't be a peaceful area to live in any longer. And I don't know how long it'll take for all of that to be built, but it seems like it's going to go up in stages. So you're looking at, maybe 2 years of building? nobody's going to want to walk back there, nobody's going to want to drive, nobody's going to want to do anything, and more than anything, I would probably say half of the people that do face Mayor Road at that time, because of the construction of the road and other things, will probably up and sell their property, which is going to bring our property value down in the process of selling. So we've thought about this for a long time. We've met as an association, and Tom's right next door to us, and then, is Doug here somewhere? Oh, there you are. You know, and we've been discussing this for a long time, and the value of what we have in the property, even though it's a twin home, it's our home, and that's where we want to stay, and we want to look out, and, you know, I know you can't leave it a cornfield or a bean field the rest of the time, but consider the people that live there. We're all, except for Amy, retirement age, and we'd like to keep it as settled as we could. And with 4 or 5 years of growth going on and the streets being constructed, it's not what we paid for. So I know there has to be, I know Hudson's growing, but let it grow somewhere else. So.
Thank you.
I just have one more thing. I don't think any of us, I've lived here for 50 years, and I don't think any of us ever anticipated that sooner or later that property wouldn't develop. And I think that one of the reasons for the extreme high density that they're looking at on it is all of us that knew the Lee family know that they were asking lots of bucks for the property, and the only way to make it work is to put a lot of properties on that property. But I think that this could be at the cost of the residents. It could be especially costly to getting the properties egressed and egressed. That to me is the biggest problem, the access to it all. Carmichael Road is, because the way it's set there, it really isn't a good access from this area because of being on the curves there. I can see a stop and go light being there sometime in the future with the dog track and with everything else there. But I don't think any of us that have lived here a long time ever felt that sooner or later that property would not develop. But I think maybe we were all anticipating it wouldn't develop into a 400-unit property. So,
Thanks.
I just want to echo Amy, 1408 Wheatgrass Street. I've owned my house there for 10 years, and it is part of the reason why people have bought into that area is because it's quiet, it's peaceful. It's meant to be one of these places where you can get away and it's home. And I agree with everything that everybody has said here in terms of understanding that development of some kind will naturally have to happen there. But if there is a way to look at this a little bit differently, you know, we have people here who have owned their homes since they were built in Tallgrass Estates. And it's really disappointing, I think, for them to see this happening, especially people that are on my side of the street where we face south. So we just appreciate you guys hearing us out tonight, and I really agree and support everything else that's been said here tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did we have a motion second already?
We have,
Okay. Mary?
So just to clarify on page 6, so this is just step 1 of this piece. I mean, this is not approving the number of housing, the density, any of that.
No.
Right now, it's not including any road improvements. It's
Temporary zoning, Ag Reserve and Riverway.
yep. I listen to the residents and the neighbors who are here and their concerns, and they're addressing all of the issues that the developer is going to have to, all the hurdles that developer is going to have to clear in order to get approval for this project. That all the issues of traffic and density, capacity issues, all of that is going to have to be taken into account when they come forward with a plan for the development. Correct?
Yes, if we annex it.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't see, we aren't approving any density yet. We aren't approving any land plan yet. We're just saying it can come into the city.
I have a question after he does.
One other question, just 1 minute. No, go ahead, Kurt.
temporary. Say this sale doesn't go through.
Okay.
How long is temporary? Or maybe it doesn't really matter, we're just designating it.
You're just designating it. So say it comes in, the development plans, or something happens, God forbid, the economy kind of tanks out. You know, that's a big concern when people do petition, is the current owners are like, wait a second, are all of a sudden now my tax is gonna go up because my property is zoned something different? No, the state regulates taxes for agriculturally, for properties that are currently farmed. So the taxes
matter
stay,
the
the tax will stay the same as long as it's farmed. And now if somebody goes in there and develops it, then, obviously there's a number of things, and I think people hit on it, is, our comp plan has commercial up front going straight to single family. That's probably not a great transition of uses. Now, is it high density, or is it medium density, or is it low density, or or a combination thereof to transition? I think, or that what that will be is a discussion that has to take place with proper notice and all of the hearings and all of that when they, when and if.
I was just wondering about the word temporary.
Yep.
And it doesn't sound.
That's just
like it
what
really
is
matters.
discussed statutorily, yep.
I have a question. Okay, I hear Mike say, if it's annexed, what's it gonna take to annex it? I mean, who's gonna vote on this final approval? And are we looking 5 years down the road? We looking, trying to do it tomorrow? When are you looking at this taking place?
June 18th, so 2 weeks from yesterday, right? Math. That is when the Common Council will consider what's called an annexation agreement or annexation and development agreement, which shows all of the costs in our capital cost study, our budget study. It acknowledges those. It by no means says, yes, you can do whatever it is that you want to do out there. But what it does do is that would consummate annexation into the city. The annexation agreement would do that.
All right,
An
so-
annexation ordinance is effective.
Okay, so then you're saying, yes, it can be built on. Then you decide, something like this, since it's already in place, or,
No, when you annex it in, you can't build anything until you have your plans approved. And those plans have to be reviewed and go through a process with notice and public hearings. In some communities, they take property, or not take it, it's a bad word. They'll annex property, and it'll sit idle for years and years and years,
that sounds good.
It happens.
You can buy it.
Obviously, we need to, as a city, to arrive at, okay, what is it that you want to do? What is the cost to the city? And identify what those are. And that's what's within our code. So they aren't approved for any construction or building of anything if this annexed in without going through due process.
So it could take, yeah, I understand, it could take years, true?
Yeah, a lot of meetings, yes.
And you folks will all have the ability to voice your opinions.
Well,
Be a
I'm gonna
lot
buy,
more meetings like this.
These are the hurdles they're gonna have to overcome.
okay, well, everybody needs to
Get
go
that.
buy a bunch of wrenches, so we can just toss them.
Step forward, please.
Mary Martin, Hudson. I just have a question or a statement on accountability. And I'm just wondering, when we built our homes up in Tallgrass, a lot of things weren't properly signed off. And I'm just wondering what guarantees we will have with the current chiefs of the city to make sure that things do get signed off properly and inspected properly. And some had a few more than others of things that didn't quite get checked off right. But I'm wondering if you do have something set up strong to make sure that with 400 people coming in, possibly, these homes are inspected properly, they're built the right distance, and everything is done right, because things slip through the cracks, and it's not healthy for the homeowners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mary Claire?
Was this, I know we talked about the previous project was always kind of considered on the books that it would come into the city. Was this, I'm not recalling that this one was.
Yep,
I
so
could just be not
page,
recalling it.
page 6,
Right.
that map, where you have the colors.
Yes.
We've assigned a future land use to it. So generally, you know, that, what that means is that we've contemplated that as an area that would, the city would eventually expand into. You know, timing on that is always a,
Right.
they've been talking about this, you know, I find records at least 10, 15,
It has been a while, okay.
you know.
I mean, because we don't have to approve it, right?
No.
The council's still gonna act on the annexation request, whether or not you grant the temporary zoning or not. It's,
Yeah, they're still gonna have to jump through all of the hoops. All we're saying is go ahead, gentlemen, and spend the money to do the studies, to do your land planning
go through the
and all that,
process.
but it's gonna come with all the existing Riverway restrictions that are there. Those aren't gonna be removed.
No, I understand that.
But I mean, even there, we're not even saying that.
No.
Right, we're
We are-
just saying
We are
that,
putting a temporary designation on it.
Right, no, I understand the process.
and
We
if,
did with that, but the,
It's just a
Same,
transitional mode, that's all it is.
and if these guys decide not to do it because they can't get the density that they need to make the dollars work, it doesn't transfer to somebody else, that would be the end of it, right?
that is what it is, yeah.
So it wouldn't, so if we're taking this action now, and it doesn't look like it's gonna be economically viable for this developer to do it, it's not saying that it's available for the next guy to come in and do it. We're just dealing with this one now, right? And they're gonna have to go through all these hoops in order to get that approval.
I'm missing some. Randy Horning, 1861 Twilight Lane, Villas of River Ridge. I'm just a little confused. So the annexation idea is part of the master plan, is that correct?
Correct, there's a future land use.
So you've
Yep.
known all along at some point we're going to annex this land.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
Right.
Yes.
But what's really triggering it right now is this development proposal, is that?
So the owner, the Lee Hortick Trust, I believe, is trying to sell it to this development company.
Correct.
Now, the development company is not gonna just buy it without
Knowing what.
knowing that they can do something on it. So what they need to do is they need to see, okay, let's see if, A, if we can get it annexed, and then B, if we can get all of our development plans approved, or some combination thereof. And
But
if it doesn't, then it won't, the
But you
sale
guys
wouldn't
are
go.
addressing the annexation right now, like, I mean, it seems like your decision to annex it right now is to accommodate this developer. And
They are the petitioner.
They're the
The
petitioner.
seller
The
is.
city
Yeah.
doesn't.
The
but you
owner-
don't have to decide to annex it right away. I mean, you can leave it on your master plan, but you
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to.
The council, and
Okay.
again, we're
But we have to have
talking,
a good reason to say no, too.
no, not for
Not
the,
really,
for
it's not,
annexation, we
it's
could,
not part of Hudson
But it's
right
part of,
now.
it's been part of our plan all along to have it.
but the council could say,
It's not,
we don't want it.
you don't need it at this time. You're not saying we don't want
That's
to annex
perfectly
it.
within their right. The council can say, yeah, not right now.
I don't, it just sounds to me
Or-
like you're triggering the annexation right now because this developer wants it, and it almost seems like then we're fine with some development going in there right now or fairly soon, and I guess I'm just wondering, what's the hurry to annex it?
What triggers it is
There's-
the owner.
There's a process that has to be followed.
Right.
For any of the land purchases with a request like this by a petitioner to do a development and have that piece of property brought into the city. Ultimately, the city council makes the decision on whether there's going to be an annexation. But the process up to that point is where we're at right now.
Okay, but you, like I said.
We
you-
don't annex property.
You don't have to annex it right now.
No, but they have asked us, as a plan commission, that's our
Yeah.
job, that's what we do. And at some point, I mean, then the council gets involved and makes a determination. They listen to what the plan commission has to say and what the developer has to say. But this is the beginning, this is just the inception of the process.
Does it create a problem for you to say, yeah, we want to annex this at some point, but we just don't want to do it now? I mean, you don't have to tell a developer we don't like your plan. You just say it's not in our interest right now to annex it right now.
That's not the job of this body.
That's the planning
That's the
commission?
council.
The city council will make that determination
Oh, okay.
on the 18th. Yep.
Okay.
And again,
I was confused because it seemed like we were, by giving the land a new zoning classification, it was like, well, wait a minute, you haven't even decided to annex it yet.
And I think it's an important, you bring up some good points. You know, first one is the owner of property has a right to petition the city to annex. Whether we do it or not, that's a council decision.
Right.
Okay, so the owner has asked, because they have a pending sale, for the city to take it, right? Whether they do or don't, it's up to the council.
Okay.
And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that, again, the zoning piece, nothing can happen. We're talking temporary zoning. We're not talking about the merits of, I think it's important to hear everybody's concerns so that as we're considering if and when or if what, whether it's now 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is, that we know that there's concerns and that we hear that, and then we decide and make an informed decision as we're considering development applications as they come forth. So I thank you for
It
that.
just sounded odd to me to change the zoning and you haven't decided yet to actually annex it. It seems to me you would say, oh, we're going to annex it. Now what do we want it zoned at? It seems
So it's a recommendation. That's the other thing, is that the Plan Commission doesn't have any authority to actually make a decision. So the
Right.
Plan Commission is a recommending body only. So it'll forward its recommendation, if the vote were to be in the affirmative, to say, okay, council, if you want to annex this, we recommend that you establish a temporary zoning designation of.
Okay, so I see what you're doing. All right, well, thank you. I was confused by the process.
The same guy that was here before. Just to clarify it, and so if the planning commission recommends to annex the property, the council may or may not do it, correct? If the planning commission says, don't annex it, most likely the council will not approve it, because what do you have a what do you have a planning commission for? So it boils down to, when you vote on this, will you vote to annex it or not to annex it? The decision is made by the city council, but they should act, I would imagine, on your recommendation. So that's my 2 cents worth for tonight. Thank you.
We're not recommending to whether or annex it or not.
This
wanted
is
to
just a
clarify that.
temporary
No,
zoning.
This is temporary,
Yes.
Temporary zoning.
temporary zoning if it moves forward. We're not making a
You're
recommendation.
not making a recommendation
Right.
on it.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for the compliment. My name's Dan Brook. I've lived here 22 years. I live in the village of River Ridge. The conversation made me think of something that happened almost 40 years ago when I was working on a graduate degree in Boulder, Colorado. A city bigger than this at the time, but still not large. And went through all sorts of discussions about how important growth is. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. And they made the decision that to somehow contain growth so that the living style of the people in the city was more focused on people rather than business or profits, that they would provide for a green space around the city, which exists to this day. So I think annexing it is a super idea, but I think the city ought to buy it and convert it into green space, one as a buffer to the city to make sure that the next generations, both of which, the two coming up, are much more interested in lifestyle than they are in money, by and large, that we provide a city that provides an environment for a lot of green space for them to move around in, have a good time, but also control the growth of the city. So I would recommend you consider that as an option. And just remember that the decisions you make, which you already know, don't affect us here. We're all here temporary, but for the future generations, as they look at the generations you make, they're going to be much more concerned about how those decisions affected the gentleness of their lifestyle, the preservation of the planet, and the good of all people, not just the people that can bring in tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions here? Anything? Everybody ready to vote?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on final development plans for MPSC World Headquarters at 2701 Harvey Street.
Last meeting, we considered concept development plans for MPSC World Headquarters at 2701 Harvey Street. 7,200 square feet of office and 16,200 square feet of warehouse space. All comments have been addressed satisfactorily. We have staff recommending approval with conditions.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Any discussion?
With conditions, you guys?
Yeah, with the conditions that Mike had stipulated.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I believe that item G they wanted to pull this from the agenda.
Postpone. So what that would be is that they unable to attend tonight. They're requesting postpone to June 19th. So what that would mean is the council would hold a public hearing only on June 18th. No action will be taken at the council until a recommendation is made by the Plan Commission.
Okay. All right, discussion possible action on a certified survey map at Annabelle Way submitted by Hanson Brothers, XII LLC.
Everybody, we sent out, Emily did a nice job putting together what she did was all of the historical context that took place between the years of 2014 and 16. It sounds like much like tonight, where there was about a discussion every single meeting as that property was being considered for development. Again, the thing with this is it's just the subdivision. It's creating a lot and an outlot. This isn't about, and the easements, it's illustrating those easements. This is not what it will or won't be in the future. There's been discussion that we had last meeting about what was shown when and at what time. Initially, we saw some multifamily in initial master plan. We saw some senior housing in a master plan. We saw nothing in a master plan. So what we had was, you had multiple engineering firms, you had multiple developers, you had MI Homes, you had Hanson Brothers, you had, Stantec, you had Stevens, then our engineers reviewing everything. It was a lot of moving pieces all at one time. But I think it's important, as we consider this tonight, that, and staff's recommendation is still to approve the CSM, understanding that if, I guess what happens or what develops or doesn't develop will be dictated as that process were to unfold.
Well, Mike, I requested this to be postponed to go through the minutes of what we did ultimately.
And that was in that information.
And there was no multi-purpose recommended for that parcel. From the history that you sent and compiled.
Correct, yep, it wasn't it was
So I was
shown,
correct.
listed. Yeah, I'm not saying you weren't, I
just want to make the point because it was never shown that that was the plan.
it was never recommended or approved for.
Correct.
that. Yes, it's still zoned R1.
Okay.
In the PRD, or that's the underlying zoning on it.
But it was approved basically as is, without that lot 4.
Isn't
Correct.
that where they wanted to give it to the city for a park?
I think that was on the north end.
That wasn't the section for the park, right?
Park is more south of Stone Pine and west. And west of this lot, or the Storm Pond. So, one of the large things from a city's perspective is that we have an interceptor line going through there that we also need that easement too. We've got to do maintenance on that and have access to it. Can we get access through a different process? Sure.
So Mike, they would have to come back for anything that they want to build on that lot?
Excuse me, you're
It's not
talking
been
Outlot
platted.
2?
Yeah, it's not been platted.
So we are only certifying it as what? Zone, single family, residential?
There's no CUP. So in the PRDs, there's a CUP that allows for, provides for what can go on a property, right? So instead of in a rezoning ordinance, which you would normally see in having standards, in Hudson, it's through a conditional use that says, okay, we understand that this property is in a PRD or a PCD or PID. We say, okay, in the CUP, this is what you can and can't do on that parcel. So, and I would, Angela, can you speak towards some of the zoning as you understand it, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I certainly think, based on our research, that's where we
Ultimately, I want to know if they're going to try to put in a multi-housing
Yeah,
right behind the
there's
clubhouse.
no question they are.
And I'll be very frank, I'm not in agreement with that.
In the Outlet 2?
Right.
in lot 4.
Down in the
Lot
valley there.
4.
You don't want to see a multi-family unit.
Right behind the clubhouse? No.
Does this allow them to do that?
From what he's saying, I
It's the
believe.
first step.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rainey, are you referring to Outlet 2 or Lot 4?
Well, they're combining them, right? Am I
Or they're separating?
They're separate.
separating?
Separating.
So where are they deciding to put this potential development? 4, 2, what? I guess Angela.
Lot 4 is, well, we are separating those lots. Outlot 2 is steep slopes and trees, which cannot be developed. I can tell you that now. Lot 4 is potentially developed. It's zoned single-family right now. We could put single-family houses there. That's as far as we've got. If we do want to bring forward, as I said, a petition to look at rezoning it, we can do that in the future. But right now, we are just platting so that we can get public right-of-way for Annabelle, and then there'll be easements. This is where the sanitary and trunk storms are come through.
Those easements are being drawn up right now by the surveyor for the recommendation previously.
So it's zoned currently R1?
That's the underlying zoning within the
Yes.
PRD.
So you could, do we need a CSM for them to do single family?
Say you
down there?
wanted to put 30 lots in there, they'd
Yeah.
have to do a full plat, a full
Right.
subdivision plat. A CSM only allows you a subdivision of up to 4 lots, I believe, in our zoning, or
Yeah,
subdivision
for a
regulations.
basically a minor.
This is an unplatted lot.
So why was everything done but that?
Because it was, when MI Homes came, they just platted their piece. This was basically a remnant piece. And now we're coming forward and starting to plat these pieces that are just remnant pieces, for lack of better words.
So if we wanted to allow just single-family homes there, we still need to do the CSM. Is that right?
Correct. I guess you don't need to do the CSM. You could, they could come in right now and do a subdivision plat for single-family homes and do it that way too,
Without the CSM?
without the CSM.
Beg your pardon?
Then why are we doing it?
That has more to do with whatever the agreement was. There was an agreement between two entities, from what I understand. Right, the Gagnons and
Yep.
Hansons for that outlot 2, which that outlot 2 would be, and again, this is an issue between two private property owners, and I don't want to speak out of school.
Nope, you're doing fine. But, yeah, it is the, and it's basically the outlet 2 will go back to the Gagnons.
Sure. Jeff Redmond, office here in Hudson, represent the Hanson brothers. So this was a parcel originally sold by the Gagnons to the golf course when they expanded. So that's why this is a separate lot, and it had restrictions on ponding. And when we did the multifamily, or the development with MI Homes, Gagnons objected to the disruption of this pond. And so we gave them basically a 4-acre pond on the MI property land that was studied and engineered, so it would, basically, they could blacktop the Gagnon property and it would accommodate all of the water because the Gagnon property drains down into this area. So we negotiated with the Gagnons to remove their objections so MI Homes could go forward. And we did not address this restriction of the waterway, the pond. And so we've negotiated with the Gagnons to say, hey, this outlot 2, we'll give that to you. It'll be affixed to their parcel. And it does have probably some development possibility as slopes, but there's probably an acre or so that they would be able to use with whatever development they ultimately come up with. They have no plans, but they see the long term. They've had different real estate advisors working with them, Bill Warner in particular right now. And so this allows us to clean up the issues with the Gagnon. It allows us to clean up a sewer line that got put over property without easements, access easements, and we'll clean that up. So this is intended just to sort of clean this up. Whatever developments the Hansons want to do, and I'll tell you the Hansons aren't going to do anything, they'll sell it to somebody. Whoever wants to move forward, they'll have to go through just like these other people, and they'll have to do a amendment to the zoning code, get all of the approvals, whatever, the city requires. This is simply CSM to clean up a bunch of stuff that was in disarray because of the way it came into the golf course.
Sure.
And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
What would your opinion be on the status of the zoning currently?
The zoning?
My understanding that it's, what we were told in the MI Homes part was, I gotta stop you, I'm Italian, I guess, tonight, that it was planned residential development. It has no zoning except coming forward and getting permission to do whatever is approved by the city council. That was my understanding, and later, I've recently heard R1, I've not seen that, but when we were working with the MI Homes, that whole area was designated a planned residential development, which means you can't build anything without a conditional use permit to say, here's where the lot lines or the setbacks have to be, drainage, all of those issues. So in our view, there's no approval to do anything without coming back to the city. That's our expectation.
Do you concur with that, Mike?
That was my question too. Do you concur with his assessment?
Yeah, I do, based on the research that I've seen, and I wasn't here, and like I said,
I
we
understand
put
that.
together the history as best as we could. It's not simple. It certainly was not a clearly identifiable, and that's why I asked his opinion, as representative of, you have fiduciary to
Yeah, the Hansons.
the Hansons.
Yeah.
But I also think it's important that, to know that no matter what happens, a subdivision plat's got to occur there. And we have to take the right of way. The only other way to do it would, like I said, just require that take place at the time of development.
But does it clean up a bunch of old issues that were?
We need to get into that sanitary sewer.
Yeah.
All we're doing is defining the property.
Lot lines, lot lines on the property.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's all we're doing. We're not, along with that, approving anything for type
Approving
of
or
use or
disapproving
density or
development.
anything like that. We're just saying, here's the parcel of property.
Well, being here through the history, and the only reason I'm feeling a little better is because, Jeff, you're talking about it, and not the Hansons. And I don't need to get into that. But if that is what truly is gonna take place, I'd be okay with moving forward.
If what's going to take place?
Just the CSM, cleaning up for our purpose only, they come back with the next thing in line, whatever that could be. I'm not interested, were you here during the start of that?
Yeah.
As a councilman, yeah, so, I'm not interested in rehashing old Hanson issues, but I'm taking your word for it.
What is the, what's the downside if we don't do anything?
That this parcel probably doesn't get developed ever, until we get this resolved with the Gagnons.
Okay,
And we've
so-
spent a lot of time, years, literally, working with the Gagnons to basically say, hey, we'll give you a couple acres.
So we're working on this now because why?
Well, Hanson's ultimately want to sell Lot 4.
Sure. Is there a
Yes.
developer in line right now?
Nope.
No,
developer in
nobody's
line.
talking to them about it.
He has talking to Zeller about listing it.
Well,
but we
it's
don't
already
have-
listed.
Is it? Yeah, I didn't know.
That's my problem here, is that it's being presented very innocently.
I didn't
It's
know
already
that it was
commercially
listed. I
listed.
asked Angela tonight whether or not it was.
It's commercially listed
Thank you,
Oh,
Kurt.
with
as
Zeller.
multifamily. So,
As multifamily?
multifamily?
I mean, parentheses say pending final approval.
So,
So I guess I'm gonna take that back, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, but I didn't know about that, but you can't, they can list it for high-rise commercial, and it still requires a city approval. It was always discussed through that whole process, and, had other people involved, that this would be a senior housing, some sort of multifamily was the best use for this. It would not be single-family.
I don't remember
who had those discussions?
I had the discussions with Denny Darnold, the mayor, all kinds of.
I don't remember it here.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah, that's fine. But we did, you saw in the 128 pages, different renditions, because we came and said, without any proposal, and people said, well, we want to see something. What might you do there? So then we come up with a multifamily or a senior housing, different proposals, Because we didn't have any developers, we're guessing. And Hanson's aren't gonna do it, they haven't done anything so far. And, you know, it's whoever wants to buy it and what's the highest and best use for the city. And our feeling was, in talking to real estate professionals, was multifamily is a nice use for that. But it's completely up to the city council.
You also, at this time, have no right-of-way for Annabelle Lane, and you have no easements over your trunk sanitary sewer. It's all on private property.
And we had agreed that with this, we'd clean all that up and those easements would be in place so that we could take care of that for you.
So that's kind of the bottom line on this issue, right?
Well, you asked what this
From my
was.
perspective,
Yeah.
you know, that's an important thing to get access to.
But the bottom line is the bottom line on this one. If they've already listed, the only reason they're here right now, trying to get this cleaned up, is because they listed the property.
And it's been for sale since Hanson's closed the golf course. It's been for sale. Whether it's been listed, it was listed, then it wasn't. Listing expired. I knew that he was talking to Brian Zeller about it. I didn't know that he'd actually signed something. That's why I asked Angela tonight, you know, is it listed or not? I didn't
Are we in any real hurry here?
I mean, do we need that access, though?
Well, do we need it next week?
I'm just,
No. We need it next month.
Yeah, well, before winter, absolutely. Before the other piece of that is if that Atwood piece were to be annexed, the trunk sewer connects to that, to the west of that property.
Yeah, the trunk sewer that goes right through the property. Basically, all of Red Cedar Canyon and the Atwood, well, it's not that way yet, but all of Red Cedar Canyon, everything comes through here.
Heritage Greens, all,
Heritage Greens, everything comes
over
through
half
this.
of the city goes through that pipe.
I don't see what's wrong with defining what the parcel is. In what we're doing, if we agree or
Sure.
say yes to this, we're defining what the parcel is.
It's still R1.
And then, depending on their final use of what they want to do, they still have to come back and say what they want to do on that parcel. Right? By accepting the certified survey map, we're defining what the parcel is.
Yep, and you know, the only other piece of that is we could have a total examiner basically go through everything and give us, you know, but that's, you know, I'll need a legal opinion at that point too, in terms of where that zoning exactly, 100% lock, stock, guarantee. It's not overly clear to me. I believe, I'm confident it's R1, but I still don't know how that all did or didn't, you know. We have all the big council approvals in that.
Is it your understanding that it's R1?
That's why I
That
asked
was
the
the
question.
underlying zoning of the golf course when we bought it, was R1. And to my knowledge, nothing has changed, because we did an application for MI Homes that was 140 acres, did not include this. So my understanding is the underlying zoning is R1.
You understand how it looks, though?
No, I don't understand what the issue is, I'm sorry.
It's always, every time this project, this Hanson development, whatever you want to call it, it's like a game of hide and seek of what you're trying to do and not being honest and forthright. From the very beginning.
Well, and I would just reference the 128 pages. There were multiple times.
Jeff, I read it.
Yeah.
I was there.
No, I understand, but there's multiple times when we were asked to render something, and we drew pictures of a multifamily, you know, an apartment complex, whether it was senior or whatever. So there wasn't any secret. I mean, this wasn't actually on the agenda when we were negotiating, you know, MI Homes. So, I mean, I understand the rancor with my client on a lot of issues. I understand that. But this is a CSM. I mean, this doesn't get him any different right to use the property than it's zoned for. And if he wanted to put in R1 houses in there tomorrow, still have to come and get approval. And we'd have to prove that R1 is the underlying zoning. I don't think this will be developed as R1. It won't sell as R1. Someone will want, just as they want to do with these other things, it'll need to be changed to something, and if it isn't changed to something different, it'll just sit there until somebody comes up with something that's acceptable to the city, and there's no right to have it changed, the zoning changed. That's a legislative decision that the city council has the right to do that. So this is just, we're trying to clean up boundaries, we're trying to clean up something with the Gagnons, we're trying to clean up something with the city so they have access that was just inadvertently neglected long before we bought the property.
Let's look at it this way. Assuming, let's say that there's a recommendation to approve with the condition that we get a legal opinion from Catherine on the current status of the zoning and verify that specific item in terms of what use limitations, or are there things in there that basically say that, well, yeah, well, it's R1 in your master plan, your preliminary master plan that was approved, that shows some, or whatever it was, you know, are you basically backed into a corner? I don't think you are, but I think it'd be worthwhile to have Catherine take a look at it. Is that fair?
So moved. Then we know where we're at.
So,
And I don't think we can do anything tonight, I just don't.
Yeah, and it'd be, the best hold harmless we could have would be to have her give us an opinion.
Give it an opinion on one sort. I'm comfortable with it, but I would prefer, understanding that they're, you know, and believe me, I don't know all the history. You know, that was the 10-year lost period, or no longer than that, 15-year, where I was gone from Hudson. It's all happened. I moved back, and now I've got to, you know.
Did you call up Danny?
Yeah, and I'll talk to him too, you know. And Liz, I think we did some of that already, or at least with Liz. But it would make me feel better if we just did that, and then, okay, that's my opinion. And
what's your motion?
To have Catherine render an opinion as to what the underlying zoning for the property
right now.
Before we vote on it.
Oh, I was saying, I would say vote on it. My recommendation, understanding this, would be to recommend approval, understanding that a legal opinion would be forthcoming, and if it proves to be anything other than R1, or if there's something, and I'm trying to figure out how to word this. We need the easements, I want the right of way. If there's something that impacts or has significant implications on how that develops other than R1, I want to know that.
I would rather not vote, and why would you approve something until you knew?
It's before council, you know, I'm just saying it.
I like the motion that we ask for the opinion before we vote.
That's what I
And I'll
moved.
second that then.
No, that wasn't what the motion was.
And that's what he just,
That's what you just said.
It wasn't, okay.
Well, what I'm saying is that we
Resolve
it first. Now we know what our answer is, and then we know what we're saying yes or no to.
We've got the data, we've got the minutes all prepared, it's done. You know, it's 2 weeks. Is that acceptable? I mean, obviously, it's
Well, we
not
want to keep
preferable.
moving.
We
We're
wanna
keeping
get
moving, but we don't have a buyer on the line. There's nobody in the wings that is going to step forward tomorrow. So, you know, we've all along has deferred to the political body we've tried to do everything that you asked us to do.
And I want an understanding where I'm coming from too, in that I wasn't here for all of this either. So I'm trying to also understand it, and, you know, thankfully Emily did a good job. Okay.
And I would say, I wasn't here, and I don't know if anybody was here, when it was zoned R1. Because we didn't change anything when we bought the golf course or when we sold MI Homes. They did a rezoning application of planned residential development for their land that they bought, and that was approved. This wasn't sold to them. This wasn't part of their application. So in my mind, nothing has changed from where it was whenever the golf course took it over in 1978.
Or when it's PRD, so there's a preliminary master plan somewhere along the line, that's where that discussion leads me to, does that set precedence for what has to be there? And
Well, and if it's a PRD, the city council go and say, we want it only to be single family, or we're comfortable with higher density with these restrictions.
But if
that's
the-
all within a PRD.
Yeah, but if what the preliminary master plan approved a higher density use in that preliminary master plan, what's your basis for saying, no, we don't like that?
Well, we don't have any basis. I mean, we defer to it at the city council.
That's the question that I want to have answered.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, all of that.
And we'll take what the will of the body is. We've always have.
We'll work through it. I mean, eventually, you know, we've got to figure something to get this resolved. And I want it done too. I like getting things in the done pile. I don't like leaving things hanging out there either. So.
I want this in the done right pile, though. Not just
Exactly.
done.
All right, anybody else?
I just want to clarify, so I have a motion by Pat, second by Fred, for recommending that we have Catherine look at this and determine the zoning and et cetera, and it comes back to Plan Commission
Correct.
for a recommendation to Common Council.
Correct.
Very good.
That's what I heard when he said, I so moved.
All right, everybody good? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Anything?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Anybody? Anything?
Do you plan on putting that sign
Yeah.
back at some point?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
It is on the agenda.
anybody else? Motion?
Move to adjourn?
Got a motion second to adjourn, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved, we stand adjourned, thanks, everybody.